Hi guys, and welcome to episode
It don't matter what number Dan makes on this, yeah.
I'll finish it. I've started, so I'll finish.
Start, so I'll finish.
Episode 104 of the PT Education Podcast.
That's what it is.
That's what it is,
That's
mate.
what you're doing,
Was
mate.
that last time I'm introduced,
Yeah,
isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah.
Whose is it?
That's
Num. Yeah.
Dan's no longer doing the intro. No, mate, I
Sad.
fucked up the intro as well, haven't I?
We did it with Cal.
Yeah, I've got the wrong number.
Got the wrong number.
Which wasn't as bad as what you've just done.
Nice.
At least got my
We're
words
tallying it up. Yeah. You got the words out.
Yeah.
Episode 104.
It is, yeah.
How are you feeling, mate? How was your week been?
Well, it's been good, yeah. Just been a good week. Some really good study this week. What's been going well? I told you off air about my daughter doing gymnastics.
Yes.
So really engaging in some of her success. She's only 6 years old, but she's it's just great watching anyone who listens who's got children or hasn't just engaging in something that's really important, and watching her do stuff and achieve something is really amazing experience for me as a father. So that's been those sort of things. I really try and connect with those things, the big things, and also the small things in life, isn't it, that we can be grateful for. We can easily run away through our week or our day without a reflection. I think it's quite nice just to go, what's gone well, what hasn't gone well, whether I'm talking to somebody else or myself, to go, that's gone well today. Really good conversations. And I've learned this through a client. It's amazing the amount of lessons I can get through reflecting. I think when I do that, I'm like, oh God, I've learned that today. I thought more deeply about this subject because a client's brought in some information about their perspective. I'm like, wow, hadn't quite seen it like that. Or I'm now changing my lens a little bit on that, or realising that that's a real big priority with mental health or well-being. So much value is in each week, and I feel like we're always standing in value, but without reflecting, you can't see that. That could be in your personal life and your professional life. So that's my mindset at the moment, mate. What's your mindset like? Where's Dan Green at the moment? Where is Dan Green?
Fucking hell.
Here we fucking go.
Dealing with some stuff, right.
Some shit going on.
It's actually an hour's therapy.
Strap yourself in.
Well, there's some things I've realised in the last
Make it
week.
session, mate. It's all right.
And I don't know, because it sort of fits in today, doesn't it? I mentioned it briefly.
Yeah.
Do you want me to talk about it now? Does it work better if we start working through?
I reckon you'll smash it in somewhere.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah, I reckon you'll.
Because I think there'll be somewhere where it comes up, and it definitely is part of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Definitely something 5 or 6 years ago, before I started working with you and working with you on this podcast, that I wouldn't have had the awareness around.
Yeah.
And it's something that created real clarity for me with a mindset switch. It was a really powerful moment, actually. You always say you learn through experience, right? And you learn through challenges, and that's all happening at the moment. But there was a real clear moment about the importance of something this week. Should I do it now?
You're on it now. You started now.
Should I do it now? So I realised actually your emotions, and certainly negative emotions, can really get in the way of you thinking clearly about the things that you need to do in order to move forward. Now, logically, that makes sense, right? If I say that to someone who hasn't even thought about it, they'll be like, well, yeah, of course. But when you've really experienced something, there was something I was angry about in the last couple of weeks but it was clouding what I needed to do to be moving forward. And so I'd got all consumed with something, and I'd stopped looking at things. And once I actually put that anger to the side and the reason for it to the side, and thought, well, okay, I wasn't annoyed with myself, but I accepted that was the emotion, but thought, okay, what do I need to be doing to moving the business forward? And I instantly felt this weird relief and the clarity come back into the vision that I'm trying to create, that had been clouded over because of the emotion, and I was feeling a strong emotion at the time. But it was a real moment and it's really brought me back to exactly where I need to be. And I don't think I was necessarily wrong to be angry about the thing that I was angry about, without going into too much detail. But that was not going to help me move in the direction that I want to move myself or the business. And it became crystal clear through dealing with that emotion. And it was a real moment where on the emotional intelligence side, to be like, don't fuse your emotion, don't get all consumed, because that could have dragged me away for a period of time and not thinking about things I need to do. I'm not in control of the thing that was annoying me, so there's nothing I could do about it, and it wasn't going to be productive in any way. So these are my thoughts and what I've been working through in the last it's probably last week, probably since I was on the podcast. But it's something that maybe 3, 4, 6 months ago, I wouldn't have been aware enough to know that emotion was dragging me away from what I really needed to do. It was unhelpful. Actually, when I look back in 6 months, it won't even fucking matter. You know, when you're in the moment of something and it feels big at the moment, when I look back in 6 to 12 months, it won't matter at all in the slightest. So try and park that. It's easier said than done, isn't it? But concentrate on the positives that you need to be working towards. And that's what I've been working on this week.
Yeah, and that goes to what I was just saying about the value in the week.
Yeah.
And value doesn't just come from reflection and all the good things, the positive things. It can come from some of the shit things and some of the uncomfortable things, and going, I've had the opportunity, you've had an opportunity to practice some of this emotional intelligence stuff through experiencing something a bit challenging, something uncomfortable, something that's triggered you, something that's brought up some anger.
Yeah.
And thought, right, well, how do I deal with this uncomfortable emotion? So the point I made last week, and I'll start on this point again today, it's inevitable that you're going to have difficult emotions that are going to cause you to wrestle and to potentially get smothered by. And today, at the latter part of today's podcast, we're going to go into some of these specific strategies in a bit more detail, so the guys listening can have some practical advice, some skills, some strategies, some techniques to work on, so when they're going through uncomfortable emotions, they've got some ways to manage it. Now, we've all got an opportunity each week to practice it on a small scale. So it could be a small trigger, something difficult, and you go, you know what, that frustrated me. How was I feeling? How do I want to respond? This becomes more and more challenging. The bigger the emotion, the more intense the experience, the more difficult the period of time you're going through. And I 100% realise that. To some people listening, they'll go, yeah, I've got this sorted. Well, life will throw something uncomfortable at you, and if you're constantly or currently wrestling with something difficult, I have immense empathy for you right now. This stuff will really, really make a difference, but when you need it the most, it's the hardest to do.
Actually, I just wrote down there as well, because the other thing that I was trying to think about is you got the emotion of anger, and then is it useful or not useful, and are you going to use it in a beneficial way or not a beneficial way? Because I really tried to think, what do I really want? If I was to go one way and use the anger, where does that lead? And is that path I want to go down? Or where does swinging back to where I want to be pointed that swing down? And is there a time and this is a rhetorical question, right? Is there a time and a place for actually, you do feel you need to say something to someone, and actually it's not always right to not. You know, sometimes it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation, and sometimes we always say this thing about being the bigger person, let's say, and not saying anything. But sometimes there's a time and a place, and you think, actually, do you know what? In the right way, I'm not saying you end up in a scrap, but actually, I do feel like I need to say something to this person. Because I think sometimes we'll end up one way or the other. You're always saying stuff out of anger that maybe you regret later on. Or you're so wanting to avoid the uncomfortable conversation that actually you always say, I'm being the bigger person, but in doing that, you never really resolve anything or get to the bottom of something. And sometimes a lot of this sort of stuff can just be miscommunication. It can be Chinese whispers, and it can be miscommunication. But yeah, I was also very careful to not turn away from an uncomfortable conversation just because it was the easier route. Because I think that was more what I was actually wrestling with. What's the right thing here? Do I go down this route and avoid it, or do I go down this route and confront it, for want of a better word? And when's the right time? When's the right place? If I was to, I wouldn't want the anger to be the overriding emotion in the moment. I'd want it to be more calculated than that. You know,
yeah, it's like, what's the result you want?
Exactly, right.
What's the result you want? What's the intent behind the conversation?
Yeah.
If the intent is just to get your point across, and it's just more of an ego thing, it can become a shouting match of two people disagreeing that ultimately doesn't have a constructive resolution. But I think you make a very good point that this really is context dependent.
Yeah.
And we have to think, well, how am I acting or responding to this emotion? Is it helpful? The way I'm communicating as well. Am I communicating in a way that is constructive, or am I just shouting in rage and anger, and that's just going to bring up a fight or flight response in the other person, and it's two people either having a shouting match, or one person shouting and the other person just running away going, I don't want to get involved. There's no constructive benefit to that. Now, I know we don't always respond well to our emotions, none of us do, but we can just get a little bit better and ask ourselves the question before, what am I looking to achieve from this and why? And in some contexts, it will just be like, it's just not worth saying anything.
Yeah.
If that person's upset me, that situation has, I don't need to say that because it's just my ego wanting to say something for me. Or other times where I'm like, actually, it might be a relationship I really care about. And actually, this is really frustrating me. This is really irritating me. I need to communicate to this person that I care about how I'm feeling. Otherwise, I'm just sweeping it under the carpet, and then it will be like it's like this seed that grows.
Yeah.
And it's growing and growing. You go, I'll be alright. I'll avoid it. I'll push that emotion down. I won't express how I'm feeling. And what happens over time, especially in like a romantic relationship, is it grows and grows. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And all the time you think you're pushing it down, you're getting rid of it. You're not. It's just growing inside you. And that's because you haven't been able to safely communicate how you are feeling to that person, and it just builds because they're a person that's in your life.
Yeah.
If they're a person that aren't in your life, or they were for a period of time and they aren't so much, do you need to constantly be picking up the phone to them and saying, this is one time and this happened and I did this and you did that? You just got to be able to move on and move forward. So we have to analyse this, otherwise we can make our life a lot more stressful than what it needs to be.
Yeah.
But on the other side of it, you make another really good point, sometimes we have to accept and acknowledge this is just going to be fucking uncomfortable, and I'm going to need to be brave enough to say what I want to say because this is important and meaningful to me, and I want to get a certain outcome from this conversation. It's important to look at that. The answers aren't black and white here.
No, they're not. And that's been more the wrestle, actually.
Yeah.
More than the anger and the clear, although that gave me real clarity around emotion, feeling it and working through it. But it was what is the outcome when you go on, when you get to this fork, what's the outcome from going one way? What's the outcome from going the other way? And is it, I'm just going to put this person in their place. Well, what does that really achieve?
This actually links into the first major point of today, actually. So I'm going to segue this. Segue so well. So just to recap from last week quickly, to be honest with you, haven't listened to last week's podcast, I think you kind of need to.
Yeah, definitely.
It links in 100% into this one. But last week, I set up what emotional intelligence is last week, and I started to give the listeners, there's a total of 4 areas to focus on to build up your emotional intelligence. 3 of them I covered in quite a lot of detail last week. That was how we develop our self-awareness. That was how we develop self-management of our emotions and how we respond to them. The third part was social awareness, understanding and acknowledging other people's emotions. The fourth part, which I didn't have time to cover last week, that links in perfectly to what you're saying, is relationship management. That's what we're talking about here, relationship management. Can you effectively manage yours and other people's emotions to get the outcome that you want? Remembering that a relationship is this kind of complex dynamic of 2 people with 2 separate perceptions, 2 separate beliefs, 2 different personalities in this kind of interpersonal climate. It's really complex. But someone with a high level of emotional intelligence will start to acknowledge how complex it is and think what you're thinking about now. What's the result I want to get? Is this worth saying? If it is, how can I say it in the most constructive way possible? And acknowledging that what you say has an impact on someone, but you're not responsible for their emotions or their reactions. Because sometimes people start to take responsibility for how someone might react before they've even reacted, so they just don't say it. You're like, no, if you've got something you want to say and there's a relationship that you either want to grow or develop, or something you feel like in life or business that you need to say, great, you're entitled to say how you're feeling, but can you manage that dynamic in an effective way that something positive comes from it? Maybe not even in the moment, maybe it's long term, but you've just done enough to communicate in the right type of way. That is relationship management. That is a key part of emotional intelligence. So I'm glad you brought that, mate.
Because you're going to have to reflect on, as you said quite right, you're going to have to reflect on what the relationship means to you and where you see it going in the future and how important it is to you in the first place.
Yes.
Because the relationship means fuck all and you're never going to see the person again. What's it fucking matter? It's a waste of, like you say, it's a waste of your emotion, their emotion and everything, isn't it? But if you are going to be in and around each other and you don't want it to be a negative thing, then maybe you do need to have that conversation. And if it ends up negative after that, I'm just thinking about myself here.
Yeah.
Well, I can at least go away and go, well, do you know what? I've gone in with the best of intentions. I've said what I needed to say. And if that doesn't work, then crack on. That's what it is.
Yeah.
But at least you can then say, well, at least I've done my bit. I can go away and think, do you know what? I tried to maintain whatever that was or could be. You can't make the other person do it.
No, you can't. And I suppose when this stuff becomes difficult is when there's a specific conflict going on. And what can be the hardest thing in a relationship is the conflict, but even more so how you repair the conflict. But it's actually the repair of the conflict where the growth happens. So a relationship can still be healthy and have conflict. Actually, all healthy relationships will have disagreements and some sort of conflict. That's okay. But how do you repair? How do you communicate and repair for that conflict? So you as individuals and you as a relationship, I might be thinking a little bit more in a romantic setting now, but it could be in a business setting as well. Hopefully I don't lose my voice here. Is how can I move that relationship forward through understanding the person, understanding myself, and realising that there might be some conflicts, but this whole situation could improve via that conflict. It's same as like in the gym. If I want my muscles to grow and develop, it doesn't happen through the stress in the gym, it happens through the recovery process. Growth doesn't happen through the stress, it's through the recovery of that stress. The stress is horrible all the time, the conflict is horrible all the time. You might develop some skills, but it's through reflection, it's through going back and repairing from that conflict where the growth really happens. And we need these emotional challenges to become more emotionally intelligent. If you bury every emotion and you constantly pull you away from every conflict and every difficult conversation and every challenging situation, you never have a chance to build your emotional intelligence because you're never having to deal with uncomfortable emotions. And as I talked about last week, that is a life where you're not going to feel fulfilled, you're going to lack meaning, you're going to lack purpose. Because if you want to move your life forward in line with your values, that will be with uncomfortable emotions.
Yeah.
If you want to move your life forward with purpose and intent, and you want meaning, you want satisfaction, you want accomplishment, all of that will come with uncomfortable emotions. You can't have those things without them.
I can't remember if I mentioned him last week because I saw an interview with him. It was Pep Guardiola.
Oh no.
I know. As much as I'm a Man United fan, he's the fucking... He's the
good,
boy, and he's good, isn't he?
Unfortunately, mate,
he's good, isn't he?
Kills me as I'm admitting that.
He's good, and he was talking about the hard work, because what you're seeing on the pitch, whenever his teams play, what you're seeing, it's almost like from the outside, people just think it happens.
Yeah.
And he was explaining how hard he works. And you don't doubt it. If you're the best manager in the world, the best football team in the world, that hasn't happened accidentally. No. So he's obsessed is a good word. He's obsessed and he works fucking hard. But what he was saying is the success wouldn't taste as good as it does if it wasn't a result of all the hard work and time that he puts into it. That graft and that, like even through the summer when they're scouting players or thinking about next season, they don't really switch off. Football managers don't. Players can, but managers can't really. And he's like, the success tastes sweeter because the level of detail and work he puts in. So while it all looks fun in games, I'm sure if you said to Pep Guardiola, I'm sure it's not. I'm sure he's a fucking stressed person. I'm sure he's getting pulled all other directions and he's trying to implement this. But I thought that was really interesting that he said the success wouldn't taste as sweet without the amount of hard work that he has to put in order to achieve that.
And what these highly successful people do... Not all the time, Fergie wasn't always the best, I'm sure, but actually overall they have got some emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And Fergie was great at the relationship management.
Yeah.
You know, and you see, and not just in football, let's get anyone successful at anything in life, they're able to achieve something in their career. They've done that with some sort of emotional intelligence quite often. I know you can get some psychopaths and narcissists who manage to achieve success, and I suppose society does validate people who can almost be a little bit dogmatic and narcissistic. Unfortunately, that's how society is.
Yeah.
But I like to think in my philosophy of the world, you can still be a good person, a self-aware person, a caring person, a most intelligent person, and achieve success. And often there are some fantastic stories. Now, I know some people in my life who are very successful at what they do, and they're doing that in an emotionally intelligent way.
Yeah.
And that's helping them be successful. That's helping them be resilient.
Yeah.
People go, oh, resilience is just, you just suppress your emotions. Don't fucking talk about emotions. You're like, actually, if you can acknowledge how you're feeling and not always respond to your emotions, that allows you to be resilient, allows you to cope with hardship, allows you to develop relationships, allows you to have success. Like, wow, this subject we're talking about today and last week unlocks fucking everything. It really, really does. And I have the great opportunity to listen to people in my personal life and my professional life talk about relationships and emotions quite a lot and more as time goes on, because maybe friends might reach out to me more now, or people that I've known in the past, or clients will say things. So I get to hear these conversations and the nuances around them. And I can hear a recurring trend of when people are talking about other people or partners, and sometimes it's male partners, they're just not acknowledging their emotions and they're just shutting down. And then they're creating more difficulty in their relationship through not talking about stuff and not speaking. And on the relationship side as well, I think it's important to note that because we don't always get this right, and sometimes we will suppress stuff and not want to talk, or we don't react right. Remember, in a relationship, it's the sum of all your interactions. So you might have an interaction that doesn't go quite right. You fuck it up a little bit, the other person's in a bad place, or you're in a bad place. What's the sum of these interactions? Because we can all handle one conversation or a few things that don't go quite right. But overall, the macro time together, what is it overall? Is it an 80-20 rule? 80% is going well and 20% is a bit difficult? That's all right. Or is it predominantly the interaction is always pretty shit? And you're trying your best to be the change you want to see and you're not getting that back from somebody else. You have to come to a place of accepting that.
That you have to be quite aware of, don't you? I think that's almost more the place you have to be aware of. When you're trying to do everything you want, when you're trying to give everything and be the change you want to see and someone's giving you nothing back, at what point do you have to say this isn't working?
But that's the place you have to start at.
Yeah.
Because that gives the other person the opportunity to meet you halfway. But you going, actually, no, I can see it from your perspective and I can get this and you're doing this and you're doing that. They're like, wow, that calms their fight and flight response right down. And then there's an opportunity for them to maybe do some reflection back to you, or them to stay in a fixed, resentful, pissed off place. And that's, again, that's their choice. And you're not responsible, I've got to emphasise this point, you're not responsible for their reactions or their emotions. You're not.
How many times you see in relationships, there's probably maybe more friendships, you probably see it in more relationships because you work with this, but when I talk to people, clients, and maybe we're talking about friendships, about one side putting in way more than the other, and you hear them talking about a relationship, it could be with a sibling as well actually, and they're always going to them and they're always around them. So as soon as that person's free, cool, you can come and see me, but the other person's always available if and when they need them. I've seen it in my relationships over the year, they're always available if I go to them.
Yeah.
You fancy coming in? No. So, and you start to actually reflect on that and see that. And does that mean you need to throw the baby out with the bathwater? Maybe not, but maybe see it for what it is.
Yeah.
That's not someone that's going to go above and beyond for you.
No.
That's only someone that, you have a bit of a laugh with, nice company, if you're over in their direction, but they're not coming in your direction for you.
No.
And it's accepting that, isn't it? Because I think sometimes, maybe earlier in my life with certain relationships that went this way, you can end up getting resentful because you feel it's unfair and they're not putting as much in, and you maybe you care more than they care, and so you can become resentful with that person rather than accepting the fact they're showing you what they think of the relationship, and it might be a bit of pill to swallow.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
It's really, really good point, mate. Yeah, definitely. It's you can end up sort of chasing people, can't you?
Yeah.
Putting more effort in. And of course, there's periods of people's lives where maybe it might be more one side than the other if someone's really struggling or they've got kids or they're going through some difficult times. But overall, the relationship needs to balance out over time.
Yeah.
Where both people are getting value and both people are equally investing over time. And that's great when you can feel like this person is investing as much in me as I am in them. There's an equal caring both ways. This person is interested in me as I am in them. It's not me asking, me approaching, me doing this. Because if it is, it's just like, I can see where that relationship is. It's something that isn't going to grow into being a romantic thing or a friendship or whatever, and that's okay. As you say, it's coming to a place of acceptance with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Rather than wrestling with that. And I think maybe if someone's in more of a romantic setting and they're really emotionally invested in someone, I hear sometimes people making excuses for their partners. Oh, but if they're doing this and they're doing this, I'm thinking, I understand that empathy, but also, what are their actions, behaviours like? What are they like with you? How are they behaving with you? What are they like towards you? How about your perspective? And then we get to see what's going on, because you can understand people's behaviours, but you can't spend your life defending and justifying them, because that individual's responsible for them, and they will show you how they feel for their actions.
That's the sentence there, isn't it? That's what. It's not the words. It's their actions that actually really show you.
Yeah.
Well, it's the way of everything, isn't it? Actions really show you what someone's about.
They do, yeah.
The amount of people I know, we both know, who say words in a certain way, and then you watch how they act, and you think, that's not what you're carrying out on a day-to-day basis. The self-awareness around that is poor. And I'm sure I've done it. I'm sure I still do it now with certain things you say. I like to think I do question myself better now when I say I'm like this.
Yeah.
And then I'm better at going, are you?
Yeah. I'm kind, I'm thoughtful, I'm compassionate. Well, where do you practice that?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? When were you last kind? What?
I just am.
Show me when you were kind last.
Yeah.
Fuck. Okay, well, don't put that one in there, because you're not showing kindness. You can say that you're a kind person, but when your actions align with that kindness or thoughtfulness or compassion, all beautiful words, and if I'm trying to be that person, then I'll have to act in line with that person and be honest with myself and going, I'm being a bit of a selfish prick right now. I'm thinking more about me. Or am I making time for people? And am I making time to have conversations and being the person that I want to be? Yes, great. I'm acting in line with who I want to be and my values. Very easy to say words. Always look at your actions. They tell, and other people's actions.
And just
They tell a
quickly,
picture.
this is where virtue, just on this very specific subject, this is where virtue signalling comes in. Because what people will do is they'll think they're kind because they put something on social media about any particular event, doesn't matter what it is, but they haven't actually fucking done anything. So when was the last time you actually did something?
Yeah.
You gave up some time and went somewhere. You know, you went to see someone, relative in a care home. You did some charity work. You did a run raising some money. You went out of your way for someone, just a friend. It could be out of your way to do anything. Not when did you put a little quote on social media. What have you actually done in your life? What have you given up? What do you donate to? And it could be anything. It doesn't have to be any of them, and it could be a million other things. But if your only thing to say you're kind is that you support certain things on social media without actually doing anything, that's just it's almost like just words again.
Yeah.
Because you're not backing it up with anything that takes any time or effort or contribution or anything. And I think it's a common misconception these days with social media.
Yeah, and also on this stuff as well, it's like links into stuff I talked about the purpose a while ago is, do you need to be validated for this stuff?
Yeah.
Are you waiting for validation? Oh, I'm kind, but when I want to get validated for my kindness, get validated for my thoughtfulness. Like, if you're truly a kind, thoughtful, compassionate person, and it's really authentically aligned with you, you don't care if people are like giving you validation for that. Hopefully the person that you're giving it towards can recognise it. I think it'd be pretty unhelpful if they're never recognising it.
Yeah.
But you don't need to be I don't need to say, oh Dan, guess what I've done this week? I've done this and this. Oh, well done, James. I don't need to tell you that.
No.
But I've been in environments where people are telling me all the good stuff that they've done and all the great things that they're doing. I'm like, okay, cool. Why? Where's that come from? They're almost trying to maybe impress me or impress themselves. I need to show the world how great I am. No, you don't. Just be that person.
Yeah.
Just be great and kind to people. And I'll tell you what, your life will be a lot better. If you're constantly acting a way just to get validation and then posting on social media or whatever, you're just like, no. No. That is, no. It's just, you know what? It's toxic, mate.
It is. It is. Because
I can't think of another word.
Clicks and I'll give you two examples of this from the mainstream. So one is Stephanie McMahon, who's one of the McMahon family, the wrestler family lot, right? And she once got caught. She actually said it. I don't know if she meant to say it. She said that philanthropy is the best advertising and marketing. So I don't doubt for big corporations it is, but is that truly doing something because you're feeling compassionate about something? Because if you're saying philanthropy is the best marketing, that feels to me there's an underlying want there. So yes, we're going to do some charity work, but it's brilliant because it gets our name out there. It's an interesting thought, right? And I'll give you another guy, George Michael. George Michael, when he was alive, did loads for people, and no one knew until he died.
Yeah.
So he would whatever the bill was, he would tip the waiter double. So if it was a £5, tip £5. If it was 10 grand because he's taking all his friends out, and he'd tip 10 grand just to the waiting staff. But he also did loads of charity work. But never once did he also arrange for the photographers to rock up and get caught doing his charity work or anything like that.
Yeah.
So no one knew until he died. And I thought that is, I mean, it's an extreme example of someone who's wealthy, of course, but that is someone who truly did not want any attention for it. He didn't want anyone to know. He just wanted to give back in some way. Yeah. And I think that's pretty powerful stuff, isn't it?
It is, and I really think we all need to look at ourselves and go, am I only acting like this because I want validation and I want to be recognised for it? Or in a relationship, it's a relationship scorecard now.
Yes.
Well, remember that time that I picked you up? I picked you up from the station last week, babe. What? No, I did. Well, so you just picked me up from the pub? Like, relationships can't be scorecards.
That's a really good. I haven't heard it said like that before. That's good.
Yeah, it just can't be, because then you're doing something for a score.
Yes.
Or I'm doing something because it becomes like I want something for that thing.
Yeah.
And that is again just going to lead to a toxic dynamic. It's
That's really
I'm doing this unconditionally because I care. I don't expect anything back for it. And that's a really important
point.
way to think about things. We've gone on a slight tangent from emotions, but all relative as far as, or relevant as far as emotions go. Let's feed into a few tips now, and let's break this down a little bit. So you talked about having someone come to emotions at the beginning of the podcast.
Yes.
Are you able to kind of, and I think you alluded to it a little bit, are you able to sort of break down some of the kind of mental strategies you use to essentially allow yourself not to be over-consumed and overcome by an emotion?
On the an evening itself, no. I sort of just, I wasn't gonna. What I tell you, what I wasn't gonna do. I wasn't gonna react in the moment. I've done that before. You know, just fucking send a message or something like that. That you then regret. So I wasn't going to do, and in that moment, I knew I wasn't going to do anything in that moment. And then it clouded me a little bit that evening with regards to how I was going to move forward. But from then on, the biggest thing that I've learned, I don't remember if it's a tip for others, but actually then really understanding the emotion, which is stuff that we've worked on, and then figuring out, well, or trying to figure out, you can't predict the future, can you? But what would I be trying to get out if I go this way, and what do I really want long term, and is this little side path that I'm potentially going to go down going to be any benefit to what I want to do long term? And that's when the anger started to subside, because I was able to look at things logically and go, well, it doesn't, if this is my goal long term, that doesn't really matter. So it was not reacting in the moment, and in this case the person wasn't here, so it wasn't like you could react in the moment, but could have sent a message or a voice note, done that before,
yeah.
You know, and then you think, oh fucking hell, you know, you wake up in the morning or whatever, and a couple of hours later you think, shit. So I wasn't going to do anything like that. I wasn't going to react in the moment at all. That's probably the biggest tip that I would have for people, actually. If you, depending on what emotion you're feeling, sit on it and actually, you know, what's the old say, sleep on it and see how you feel in the morning, because actually just let that anger subside, or upset or whatever it is subside, and then start to really think about where you're going and what that's going to bring. What is this going to bring to you? And I think that's the route I went down, and I really felt that it shifted the emotion out the side.
Yeah.
I didn't try and fight the emotion in the immediate. I didn't try and fight the emotion.
No.
I was angry.
Yeah.
And I think I was probably rightfully angry, but so I just let it. I was just going to be angry. I didn't. You know, I think, and this was what I definitely picked up from you, where you don't feel bad for the emotion, or don't feel negative on yourself, or don't fight it and stifle it. Let it be, but and understand why. But it doesn't necessarily mean I needed to react to it.
Yeah. So you're looking at yourself non-judgmentally,
Trying to, yeah.
and rather than kind of like wrestling, say, I shouldn't feel like this. I shouldn't feel angry. I shouldn't feel it. You're like, I do feel like this, and I understand why I do. So it's a slight compassionate mindset, and there's a non-judgmental mindset around feeling an emotion. As soon as you judge an emotion, you probably become more consumed by it, because you feel bad for feeling bad.
Yeah.
I feel angry for feeling angry, or I feel guilty for feeling angry. You're just adding another layer of difficulty on there, rather than it's okay. It's okay to experience any emotion. It's healthy to experience emotion.
Yeah.
Emotional health is vital for our well-being. It's an area that we are learning more and more and more about, and an area that we still don't talk a lot about in the well-being space. We are emotional creatures. We all experience emotions. So if we never manage them effectively, we are causing more and more stress to our whole system, which can lead to more and more inflammation, which can lead to illnesses, unhelpful behaviours, toxic dynamics, poor relationships. The list goes on. And we mentioned a lot about relationships today. Well, a podcast we did some time ago was a Harvard University study for, I can't remember the title of it now. What was the title? Essentially, it was How to Live a Happy Life.
I remember. Yeah.
And they studied over like 70 to 80 years of this study. It's quite well documented now. Everyone's been talking about the study in the last kind of year or so. And essentially, the thing that came out for the people who had the happier, longer, healthier lives was they had healthy, secure relationships. If you have fuck all emotional intelligence, or you're responding badly to your emotions all the time, or more often than not, you're not going to have good relationships. So you're not going to have a good quality life, and you're not going to have a healthy life. So this stuff's really vital, and you're peeling the layers back, or we're peeling the layers back to say, look, number one, you observed non-judgmentally. You gave yourself some time in the moment, and emails and messages or voice notes, they're so easily accessible now. I can just straight back. And that is such a key bit of advice for any of us when we're experiencing it. As soon as you're speaking to that person in a place of triggered emotion, which sometimes you will do, because
you will.
They're fucking there.
If they were there, if they were there, it's different then, isn't it?
But if you've got the space, just give yourself. You don't have to. It's not life or death right now. Yeah. Give yourself a night, and it's amazing how much differently you see the situation. Even a couple of hours later, but definitely if you can sleep in it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've done it where I've actually written the email or written the message and just not sent it, because I know I've now got the emotional intelligence to go, that's my emotional brain going off for a while. I needed to get it out.
Yeah.
I didn't need to press send.
Yeah.
Next day I accidentally pressed send.
Yeah, can you imagine? Because you know what I do now? If I'm going to write an email back to someone like that, and I
didn't mean it.
I delete the email address.
Yeah.
I delete the email address out,
Yeah.
and then just in case there is any accidents,
yeah.
and then and you are right. It's amazing. Or journal. That's the other thing, you can journal it. But there is amazing how much better when you write an email saying exactly what you fucking want to say, and then just delete it. You feel better.
Yeah,
it's just getting it out.
Well, it's like speaking to someone, isn't it? And when I'm doing sort of therapy-based stuff with people, the best metaphor that tends to come up is coming into that session. Maybe they are feeling quite emotional. They've got these heavy bags that they're carrying, and just as they come in, they'll just put the bags down, metaphorically, put the bags down. They talk, they open up in a safe space. And you and me both know how this feels, to open up how you're feeling. When you go and pick those bags up again, which is essentially saying the situation hasn't changed, the situation or the people are still here, pick up those bags. They feel lighter. They feel lighter. And they always do. Whether you're verbalising that with a friend or a professional, or you're journaling, or you're writing it down in an email, you'll feel better for having verbalised it. So you're giving yourself some time. You're using a strategy of communicating it in a healthy way. But in the moment, if you can develop the skill to actually be aware of your breath, you're going to feel tense, you're going to feel tight. Can I just go, slow my breath down a little bit, focus on my breath. I've got some mindfulness, and I've got some somatic quietening. Essentially, I'm calming my nervous system down. A calm nervous system allows me to maybe make some room for the emotion. And they talk a lot about this in acceptance commitment therapy. Russ Harris's work, he's written a book called The Happiness Trap, expands on this stuff in so much more detail than what I'm doing today. But they'll talk a lot about making like space within you for, in this case, let's say anger. And they'll say, how does the anger feel? Does it feel really, what's the shape of it? What's the colour of it? And get you to just describe the emotion. As you're doing that, funnily enough, you think you fuse with it more, but you actually start to defuse from it. I'll talk later about what I mean by that. But by making room for an emotion, it takes the wrestle away. And you were talking about this. Rather than fighting it, go, I shouldn't feel this, or fucking hurt, you just go, right, I'm breathing. I do feel angry. I do feel really frustrated or upset or sad or depressed or anxious. That's okay. I give myself permission to feel that. And once I do, I give myself an opportunity for the emotion to slightly dissipate. Now, it depends on the degree of the situation with how long it takes to dissipate. You know, you might be able to dissipate quite quickly if it's something more acute. And if it's something more of a chronic stressor, you might need to use more advanced psychological skills here as well. So context is everything, but I think that's an important one. And then, as you said, also, you decide on a helpful and positive response.
Yeah.
What is the most helpful, positive response I can do here? Is it an email? Is it a message? Is it not even getting involved in it? What do I want to do? At least then you've given yourself a chance to engage your logical brain rather than just react emotionally. And the better you get at this, the quicker that communication can be between the two. Some people's emotional brain and logical brain are like two separate entities and never communicate. Some people, it takes a long time. But as you get better, that communication can improve. Where you can feel a trigger and you're like, oh, I'm into my logical brain pretty well. Anyone who's had to deal with a lot of like high stress situations, I've had to be really good at this skill. They've had to go from emotion to logic pretty quickly. I've got to make a logical, rational decision in a very stressful state. But these people have trained that over experience. There was a podcast I was listening to the other day about someone who's been in the CIA, and he was talking a lot about all the tests and all the experiences they go through to get into the CIA.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting.
And the pressure they put on them to basically put them in these emotional states. They break them down to see how they react and see if they can basically act logically and realise it's just an emotion and still see logic. And they're doing it again and again and again. And they've obviously become, these highly skilled spies, and they need to put them in these stressful situations. But most of us, general population, are going to be shit at it. So have some compassion and realise that maybe each week or each day or every couple of weeks, there are opportunities to develop the skill. And you talked about one today.
It's a bit, that takes me back to, do you remember SAS Who Dares Wins? When it was popular here. It might still be on, but I don't think this is popular now. But they were doing things for 10 days. And of course they had the physical challenges. But if you remember, there was the stress test at the end, which funny enough got more of them. You know, where they'd blindfold them, put them in stress positions. They might put the baby crying or the white noise on. And I don't doubt for a second it's incredibly stressful. But in a situation where those people knew they were safe, they're on a TV show. So they know it's not like they're not actually being tortured that's where a lot of them broke. They couldn't, in that state, get themselves into a logical state to remind themselves of where they were and what they were doing. And it looks easy when you're watching television, doesn't it? It must be
sitting there.
I could join the SS, mate.
Having a cup of tea, dipping your biscuit in, go, babe, I might give it a go next year. Don't look that hard. I can do some hill reps. I'm good at hill reps. You see me, and I can hold the stretch position all day. But remembering, obviously, contextualising it, they're tired, they're worn out,
yes.
And the SS is very good at kind of psychologically manipulating you because so you're in an emotional state.
Yes,
and you're not thinking logically. You're not thinking, oh, I'm going to be safe and home in 2 days' time. All you're thinking is, oh, God knows what you're thinking, but it's a horrible, dark place to put you into.
Because it must be horrendous, and it looked horrendous.
Yeah.
But you're on a TV show where you can leave at any time, but it doesn't matter in that moment. You're just lost in it. Well, you must be. But the reason it came to my mind was them talking about as well breaking you down breaking you right down to an emotional state, and then how you're able to deal with that and control yourself in an extreme circumstance, rather than just like a normal everyday one.
But the principles are kind of similar, aren't they?
It's just to a more deeper level, isn't it?
Because they're just trying to develop that skill, aren't they? Of being able to be in a really physiologically, psychologically, emotionally fatigued and exhausted state and still respond in a helpful, constructive way, which in the Special Forces you've got to be bloody good at.
Yes.
So that's the same principles, eh?
Do you know what I think? I find it hard now, and sort of the stuff I do is in a debate.
Yeah.
Just be able to. Obviously, most of us live in our little echo chambers where you're just listening to people. I find it, hard enough if I'm just not even debating, just fucking listening to someone chatting shit. My opinion, chatting shit.
Or even just trying to communicate your message without someone fighting against you.
Yeah.
Like just go, can I get my message across clearly? That's hard enough as it is, let alone when someone's debating what you're going to say. I mean, I haven't had much practice in debates, and I'm sure I'll be pretty shit at it.
Imagine if you're in an actual debate with someone who's knowledgeable in the same area but with different opinions.
Yeah.
And that's what I really respect anyone that can go on a debate.
Good test.
Keep the cool, because I start to, again, the clouding thing. Like, if you're starting to get angry with the person opposite you, you start to forget being able to put your side across concisely. So you struggle to communicate, even though you know in your head what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
And then you cloud and you get almost more angry and frustrated with yourself for not being able to say what you want to say in response back to them.
Yeah.
To be able to keep all of that while someone, in your opinion, is chatting shit, and then be able to put it across concisely as a counter-argument. I mean, that's a credible level of emotional intelligence. To debate properly, you'd have to, wouldn't you?
You've got some emotional intelligence, you would say.
Otherwise, just turns into a shouting match.
Yeah, unless you're just very good at like suppressing stuff all the time, which is supposed.
Or you're just more clever than the other person that can just run rings around them.
So smart, yeah. I think another part of this is tips. Is actually, this doesn't get spoken about a lot, but again, it's from Acceptance Commitment Therapy. Russ Harris, I want to give him credit. This isn't James Scheibe's work. It's stolen from other people, as everyone does, don't they? I'm sure he got it from someone as well, probably. Yeah. But it's how you speak to yourself. And when you're going through difficult emotions and you're making some space for them, hopefully I've sold, throughout last week's podcast and so far today, both of you and me have sold how important this stuff is to work on. Talking to yourself. Can you come up with and these are just some ideas now of ways of kind of working through a difficult emotional state. So some ideas are saying something like, I'm not happy with this emotion. It feels uncomfortable and intense, but I'm able to cope with it. I can make room for it. And what I like is saying to yourself, I can cope with it. I can make space for this emotion, rather than we often don't even think about it at all, and we just feel angry and frustrated, and then we just get rid of it, or we distract ourselves, we go on social media, or we go to the gym, or people go and do alcohol or drugs. I'm not saying any of these things are good or bad, but if they're always a coping mechanism for distracting from your emotions, why don't we do a better job at being more present and going, okay, I'm not happy with how I feel right now. That's okay. It's uncomfortable. That's okay. But I can cope with it and I can handle it. And I like those words. I don't want, it's uncomfortable, but I can cope and handle. It's that belief in yourself. And often people will, and I know I was guilty of this when I was younger, I was kind of suppressing emotion for lots of reasons. And one was like, I didn't believe that I had the capacity to even cope with that emotion because it was so intense. I probably wouldn't have responded to it in a helpful way. But I was actually making the problem worse. If I made room for that emotion and actually built a better relationship with that emotion, I would have then given myself a chance of a better response. So by suppressing and avoiding, I made the problem worse. And when the emotion did get too much, inevitably the reaction to the emotion was always going to be unhelpful because I didn't have the skills and the strategies to work through to work through it. So this stuff is a game changer. Something like, it's unpleasant, but I can accept it. Acceptance, that's a key word today, isn't it? It's unpleasant, it's not nice, but I can accept this emotion. Are you wrestling with it? It's Chinese finger trap.
Yeah,
You're like pulling your fingers stuck in the chest, which I was going to bring along today, and I forgot actually. I was going to get us to do that again, unfortunately. I don't like it, I don't want it, but I can handle it. Words don't change everything, but they can act as a reminder. These little sentences aren't going to suddenly transform it, but just a little reminder to yourself that you've got what it takes to be able to handle it. I alluded to fusion and diffusion earlier.
You did.
So, what do you think fusion means? When we say fusion with emotions and thoughts, what do you think that
I know
means?
you're not really meant to use the word in the definition, but I think about, well, fusing with it. You're actually you're associating the two or fixing the two together. Because diffuse being the other way, where you're able to sort of separate yourself from it.
Yeah.
Would be the way I would think about it. So fusing with emotions, almost getting the attachment stronger, and then diffusing it will be sort of separating the two.
Yeah, so fusion is like things melting together, isn't it? Things becoming one.
Yeah.
And if you fuse something, it's becoming one thing. So where someone becomes that emotion, rather than I feel depressed, I am depressed.
Yeah.
I'm an angry person. All these thoughts we have about ourselves or about the world, these beliefs become so cemented, they become our reality. And that thought is fact, that emotion is me. And not being able to separate the two. The more we do that, the more likely we are to judge ourselves for having the emotion, because it's become us.
Yeah.
So that can happen in the moment. We can really, and sometimes a little bit of fusion in the moment is okay, because you fuse with it naturally. And then can you then defuse from it, which, as you're leading to, is separating yourself from the emotion. So the best metaphor we use is the weather metaphor. So remembering that your emotions are like the weather. Emotions and uncomfortable emotions and thoughts like the weather. Sunny, rainy, windy, whatever in this country, rainy and windy most of the time.
It's fucking sunny.
Got some sun today, actually.
Yeah,
got some sun. It's a game changer, isn't it? Everyone's a bit more happy today. So remembering that we're not the sky, though. So we're not the weather. We are the clear blue sky that's above the weather. So seeing yourself as an individual away from the emotion separates them. And some of the skills we've already talked about, and I'm going to share with as we move on towards the end now, is helping you defuse from stuff. So it's letting go of stuff, isn't it? It's being able to notice how you're feeling. I said earlier, non-judgmentally. Maybe with curiosity. Oh, I'm feeling really angry. Rather than like, I shouldn't be feeling angry, or just curious. Why am I feeling angry today? Or why am I feeling frustrated? Or why am I feeling let down or disappointed or upset? Oh, let me just examine that a little bit. And can I develop what you would call the response flexibility? And response flexibility is basically being able to diffuse from something and developing the ability to be able to handle life's inevitable ups and downs, disappointments and triumphs and challenges, and being able to pause and choose an effective response. That's a real key thing in life, a response flexibility. Can you be flexible with your responses and be able to change your response depending on what's going on? Notice I said triumphs as well. So some people you see it and have triumph. I'm going to tell the world about it, give me validation for my triumph. I'm this, I'm that. Like, can you handle your triumphs with humility? That's emotional intelligence as well.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about uncomfortable, negative emotions today, difficult emotions. But how about stuff that is more positive emotions? Do I handle that well? Do I go happy and suddenly, I've gone out on a massive spending spree or whatever? So there can be unhelpful behaviours with nice emotions as well, and more comfortable emotions. And life will be inevitable twists and turns. There will be our ups and downs. So it's the ability to be able to pause between stimulus and response, choose appropriate response is really, really kind of key there. I want to sort of highlight that point really. So with emotional intelligence here, we've got the trigger, we've got interpretation, we've got behaviour. And I feel like we've explored this a little bit today and a little bit last week as well. But I want to emphasise these points because it helps simplify this stuff. So what's a trigger, mate? What do you think of it as a trigger when it comes to our emotions?
So it's something that's brought up an emotion in you for whatever reason. So, and it could be any sort of emotion, sadness, anger, happiness, whatever. But there's something that's happened externally that has brought an emotion internally.
Yeah. So we've got a trigger, and then we've got kind of like how we how we might interpret that as well.
Yeah.
So we've got, because we could say there's a trigger, and then there's how I think about that trigger, what's my beliefs around that situation, and then what are my associated behaviours as well. So essentially, what we've got here is the environment, we've got our cognitions, and we've got our behaviours. There's a little bit, I'm breaking down a basic CBT model again, really.
Yeah.
Just oversimplifying it, really. But what this does, it gives us 3 areas to manage with our emotional intelligence. So we talked about at the beginning, managing triggers. So really, we were talking about the context of people. People can trigger us. How could we manage the triggers with people? How could we manage that one, do you feel?
Oh, context dependent, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be dependent on everything we've spoken about today. Do you mean sort of in terms of if someone triggers us? You mean?
So yeah, I mean, it's sort of like if I've got a trigger, what by an individual or an experience or situation, if I was to manage that first part of it before looking at other things, how could I manage that part?
Well, probably what I was talking about earlier. Almost like you've got the trigger there, understand the emotion, maybe understand why you feel the emotion, so go that next level down, let it subside if you need to, and then understand, in order for you to move forward and be the person you want to be, or be in the situation you want to be, understand the best way you feel to move forward, which takes some thinking and some reflecting.
It does, and also sometimes, like, just take yourself away from the environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think sometimes, like, we think about, like, social media is a good example.
Oh,
like,
yeah, it's a very,
It's kind of like triggering
just
me.
fuck
I'm
it
like,
off. Yeah,
definitely.
fuck it
Like,
off.
I've got to be. Why am I getting brought up? Or is that individual? I could be around someone, and it could be my stuff as well. The state that I'm in. I'm just not getting on well with that person. That person is triggering something in me. I want to understand that, but also think: do I need to have that person or that situation? Do I need to be putting myself in that situation every day? Or every week? I don't. I'm making this hard for myself. Why don't I just avoid that trigger? That's just not needed. It's something really simple and silly, really. Like, am I always caught in rush hour traffic when I actually can walk to work?
Yeah.
Because I've been disorganised at what time I decide to drive down this road?
Yeah.
Well, that's just me not planning ahead. Why don't I just leave an hour later and not be in the traffic? Because the traffic really pisses me off and I find it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
And that's a really simple little thing. But
It's true,
just
though.
me just avoiding that trigger.
Yeah.
Why not avoid it rather than every day going, I can't believe I'm in this. So there's a way to manage your lifestyle to avoid some triggers. And I think that's a side of it as well. Maybe how I'm thinking about it. So go back to the traffic thing as well. Could I interpret it differently and go, well, hang on, James, you can put a podcast on. It's a place where actually you can be a bit, you don't have to be stressed. You can be quite calm. It's a chance to do some mindfulness, whatever. Could I interpret that situation differently if I wanted to? And then the last thing is, which we said earlier, is create some space so you can manage the behaviour. So you can manage your thoughts, think about things differently, reframe it, manage the trigger, or manage the behaviour itself. And I think that's it. I think the next point I want to go on to is paints a picture of what you were talking about really well earlier, which is you were chatting a lot about how you can become overconsumed by an emotion, and it might not judge, that's the wrong word, it might change your reactions and responses because you're so immersed by it. And it's almost like trying to listen to your favourite radio station in the storm. So you're trying to hear that radio station, but the storm is going on.
Yeah, it's a good analogy,
and
actually.
You can't. And sort of, what happens when you spend too much time connecting with the future or predicting the future or trying to remember the past or whatever? That is all smudging it. So it could be an emotion, but it could be your thoughts as well. And I'm missing out on the here and now. I'm trying to listen to the here and now, but I'm overconsumed by that anger. I'm overconsumed by a worry in the future or what's already happened in the past. So it comes back to our mindfulness again, and mindfulness being a really good strategy at managing our emotions.
Yeah.
If I can be more present, meditation's really helped me last year. When I was able to meditate a bit better and be more mindful, I managed my emotions so much more effectively because I was able to engage in the here and now, and that calmed my system down. So when I was in those emotional states at another time, I coped with them better because my system was calmer. So I think that is something to really throw in there is we have to do a better job at being more present if we're going to be emotionally intelligent. I don't feel that one gets mentioned much with emotional intelligence, but I think that's a really big one.
Absolutely. And also you have to look at how you... reflection and presence, isn't it? Reflecting and being present. Because it's the only way I could have got through the last couple of weeks of looking forward as well. So you've almost got to add all three together to understand how to react in the way that you want to based on how you're feeling, reflecting on obviously why you're feeling like that, but also where you want to go.
Yes.
You've got to look at, or you've almost got to look at all three. Not every single time you have an emotion. We're talking about slightly bigger things here,
Yes,
aren't we?
of
If
course, yeah.
something really annoys you,
Yeah.
then you really need to reflect on all that. Because most people just act in the emotion in the moment.
Yep. And then they give themselves a narrative as to why they're sort of doing that. And then they'll say, oh, I'm doing this because of this reason and this reason. You're like, are you just justifying your reaction here?
Yeah.
Because actually your reaction was an emotional reaction based from an emotional state. And now you're trying to find a logical narrative to justify your emotional reaction. What you're not doing is taking responsibility and going, I just reacted from an emotional state and it wasn't that logical. That's okay.
It's like the alcohol thing, isn't it? You know, we talk about some of the good things about it being you're completely present and enjoying the moment. But the other thing then is you're not going to reflect or look forward if you're reacting emotionally in that moment either, which leads to obviously certain events as well.
Shall I just finish off with a quick 3-question action plan?
Yeah.
Which kind of summarises what we want, and I want to finish off with a little quote as well. If there's anything
Yeah, we've
else
got.
to
Yeah,
add.
no, we're good.
Doing that for time.
Yeah, we're all great.
So I think a nice action plan. Hopefully, I can recap the stuff if you feel we need to, mate. I think I've covered a lot of stuff. I think 3 questions to really emphasise what we've covered today, which is what happened and why. So, what was the situation that occurred with the person or the experience, and why did you feel that emotion, which is what we talked about today? Can you understand that? And this becomes more important, the more intense and more difficult. Maybe the more frequent. There can be certain situations that I'm frequently in a place where I'm getting triggered by this individual all the time. I'm constantly having this issue with my partner where we're in conflict and we're never able to repair it. I'm constantly in this environment and it's upsetting me. Okay, well, what actually happened and why? So the trigger, the emotion, but also the state you were in at the time. Like, you're going to more likely to have conflict with someone when you're feeling tired, stressed and run down.
Yes.
So if you manage your own physiology and manage your own health, you're probably going to cope with things a lot better anyway.
Yeah.
And if you're not in a good place health-wise, bloody hell, this stuff is like 100 times harder. So what happened and why? Reflect on that. Use this as your action plan, because then you can say, what would I like to do next time?
Yeah.
Next time, okay, I didn't react perfectly, did this okay, but next time I'd like to be able to pause for longer. Next time I'd like to be able to breathe a little bit more. Next time I'm just going to avoid it.
Yeah.
Answer that question for yourself. What do you want to do next time? And then the last question is, what will actually help you achieve this? So is it, do I need to talk more about my emotions to some friends, to some family? Do I need to journal? Do I need to work through things mentally so I can start to answer these questions? Do I need to manage my stress? Do I need to sleep, exercise, learn about emotions, listen to some more podcasts on emotions? What will help me achieve a better reaction next time? And though if you can work through that, which is actually some 3 simple questions, you will do better with your emotional intelligence, your emotional management. Your actions and behaviours will improve, your relationships will improve, your life and well-being will improve if you can start to navigate and work on those 3 questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And I think finally a quote that I heard the other day as I was kind of researching this stuff, which was a really, really good one, is people will forget what you said. People forget... So let me say it again. I'll get it right.
It's like me at the start.
Yeah. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel.
Yeah, it's true.
So I like that. So let me say it again because I fucked up first time. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. That's from a poet called Maya Angelou. And I like that. Because essentially that's what that's saying is our emotions have memories.
Yeah.
When you ask someone what happened last week, let alone last year, memories are always a little bit vague, and we tell our own stories. I can tell you a story on a conflict I had with some bloke in the car a week ago, but my story's never going to be that accurate. We can laugh about it and make a joke of it, but because I was in an emotional state, my emotions are going to kind of like, I'm going to remember the emotional state and remember how that person made me feel. Now made me feel angry, frustrated. So when we can go back to how we started the podcast today with our relationship management, and we can start to have more constructive conversations, and we can be more aware of other people's emotions, and we can start to create a positive emotional interaction over time, wow, people really don't remember that much what you say, if I'm honest. And we forget what we say ourselves, like what other people said to us, but we do remember, that really upset me.
Yeah.
That really made me angry. That really made me happy. When I was with that person and we went out on a night out, what did me and Dan say? I remember part of it, but I just remember it was really good fun. I had a really good time and a good laugh. What happened? I remember some of these conversations all a bit vague.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed the experience. That's what I remember is the enjoyment. If I had a bad experience, I remember that was an uncomfortable experience. I just don't remember the exact words that were said. That's the key. That's key, and that's a big part of emotional intelligence, is trying to create an environment that can have some positive emotions. Try to develop our skills of negotiating and responding well to uncomfortable emotions, and ultimately move your life in a positive direction. And I've only scraped the surface of this stuff. It's as comprehensive as it could be in 2 podcasts.
Yeah.
But if you want to learn more, there's fantastic podcasts on emotions, not just our one. There's great books on it. I mean, the subject is massive, but hopefully this has been enough of a comprehensive view over these 2 podcasts to give people some meat and some good stuff to go away and work with.
Yeah, I think it was just when I brought it up, it was just because we use the term a lot.
Yeah, we do.
And I think to be able to just, for people now to revert back to or see what exactly we mean when we say it and throw it out there. And also, there'll probably be some people out here, like I did when I initially used to hear it, who think they're emotionally intelligent, but maybe it's something they can now reflect on with a bit more knowledge on it and go, actually, am I as emotionally intelligent as I thought?
Yeah.
Because I say, I've seen a lot of people confuse emotional with emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Vastly different things.
I think on one final note, when we're more of an emotional state, and again, going back to you set the podcast up really well today with your story, and I think you've linked a lot of stuff into what you've said today. When you're in an emotional state, it clouds your judgment and clouds the world that you see.
Yes.
You don't see anything with that much logic, and essentially, the world you believe in becomes the world you live in.
Yes.
The world you believe in becomes the world you live in. So if your emotions are basically masking the world, and you're having these associated negative thoughts with those emotions, your whole reality is skewed. The way you think about friends or family or partners or other people can all be so skewed. Think about your life, think about you. So the more we can do a better job of managing our emotions, the more we have a greater likelihood of having more helpful thoughts and beliefs potentially, and then the world we live in becomes a little bit better.
Yeah.
So yeah, our reality is kind of the way that we think often, which is important to recognise. Next week, we've got a great podcast, haven't we?
We're in London town, man.
London next week.
London town for a podcast next week. So, we're a week behind, yeah. So come out the week after. But yes, I'm excited, mate. Look forward. We always enjoy going up. Good guest.
Really good guest. A lot around psychology and personal development. It's going to be really exciting. If you have listened and you've enjoyed, please, you can give us a little
like, share. Share's massive.
Share's massive.
And then subscribe's massive as well.
And a little, not what's the one where people write a little comment, a nice thing about you on the podcast.
Or a bad thing, depends how you feel.
Yeah, a rant. If you have any questions as well, let us know.
Yeah. But that's great, yeah. So we're on the road next week. We'll be at a London town. Are we announcing it, or should we wait till after?
Wait till after.
All right, we'll wait till after. Keep the people guessing. Yeah. Right, guys, have a good week.